Welcome to Tattoo Tabletop. My name is James, and today we are talking about cinematics in Warhammer, and we are doing a tier list ranking them. I was actually thinking about this because on my YouTube page, I had watched a couple of cinematics, and I started just watching all of them back to back, and I was remembering, how did I feel when these came out? Did they make me want to start playing the game? Did they make me want to start playing the game again? Did they make me hyped? And I asked myself this question. I only have a couple of the cinematics here because they've only done a couple of them, but I just kind of wanted to rank the ones that were really top of mind for me. So let's get into it.
Today's video is sponsored by The Forge for all your hobby nerd needs. Whether it's Warhammer 40k, Age of Sigmar, Marvel Crisis Protocol, Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, Lorcana, and a plethora of board games, The Forge has what you need. The Forge has been my go-to shop, and the inventory has only grown. If there's something you don't see on the shelves, fill out a product request form on their website. Thank you to The Forge for sponsoring this video.
Now, we won't have any of the trailers in here because I don't feel like getting potentially copyright strike, and I thought it would do anything because I don't really make anything. But let's go ahead and let's actually start with some of what I think are, let's just start with some of the earlier ones. So, some of the ones that come to mind. Let's start with this one here, which is Age of Sigmar 3rd Edition launch. This was launching the new version of the Age of Sigmar 3rd Edition. It showcased the Stormcast versus the Cruel Boys. This was the Dominion setup. Now, what did I think of this? Just to kind of give you the paraphrase of what some of the cinematic did, is it started with this leader character, this Lord Imperator specifically, and he's making his way through the halls, and he's talking about the history, and he's looking at these giant murals of all the individual gods, including death and chaos, and talking about living through the age of chaos, and how Sigmar is coming back to reclaim the realms. And it builds up to this moment where he stands on the large Celestium and is ready to deep strike down with all of his troops, and it pans over to a city that's being destroyed and attacked by the Cruel Boys, and one of them is even holding up a severed head. It was really, really good. I will admit, this one absolutely hyped me up. I was beyond stoked about that one. I genuinely think that was just fantastic. It really hyped me up for it. Now, was it jump out of my seat and scream? Probably not. But as far as its actual shots and stuff go, I would say it is a solid showcase. It did a really good job of hyping me up for the new edition. The Stormcast Eternal models looked great. And I thought that it was actually pretty well done. And I loved the fact, spoiler alert, that at the end, he actually dies and then gets reborn again. You can kind of see it. I think it did a good job of driving and diving into that aspect of the lore that they come back, but it hurts every time. So I thought that actually did a really good job. Again, a solid showcase. All right. So let's jump on to the next one, which in this case is the Horus Heresy 2nd Edition launch trailer. I'm just going to tell you right now. Cinema. It is absolute cinema. I think it was incredibly well done, and the music, the atmosphere, the composition, the color, and the action sequences were incredible. Number one, we also got a fully voiced Horus Lupercal in the middle of his great heresy, his great rebellion, and you get this fantastic image and picture behind him as a character, even just from this cinematic. If you have no idea who this guy is, you get a feeling. There's this sort of impending evil to him while simultaneously allowing you a brief peek into what his psyche is thinking. He says, I never wanted this. I never wanted to unleash my legions. And it paints a really good picture of the heresy. And then to set that with the backdrop of all the action sequences that take place, the Marines fighting Marines, deep striking from high up in orbit, like getting that close-up perspective of the drop pods. I think this one was about as good as it gets. It made me buy a Horus Heresy 2nd Edition box. I wasn't even remotely playing Heresy. I hadn't even remotely considered Heresy, but I saw that trailer and I wanted to play Heresy. I was so stoked. I was immediately sold. I'm like, I don't care what the price is for the box. I'm hoping it's good, and yeah, it was worth it. The 2nd Edition core box for Horus Heresy is still absolutely a phenomenal value. The amount of Marines you get, the kits, you get Land Raiders, you get Cataphracti, they're great value boxes, and that trailer absolutely did the lion's share of work for that. So, Horus Heresy cinematic trailer, second edition, peak cinema, 10 out of 10. If you haven't seen them, go watch it. It's incredible. Next up, we'll dive into the launch of 10th edition. I know there's the 9th edition one versus the Necrons. It was okay. I'll just put that one off there. I think it was kind of cool-ish, but for the most part, I'd put it under S. So, forgot the thumbnail here, but in case you're wondering, 9th edition cinematic, 10th edition cinematic, how did I feel about it? It did some cool things. I will say that one goes under a solid showcase as well, specifically because when it comes to these cinematics, it's more than just showing off new models. It's more than just showing them off in an animation format to hype you up for a new edition or a new release or anything like that. It's about the story behind it. And the thing that the 10th edition trailer did particularly well is it does it all from the perspective of Roboute Guilliman. He's obviously out and he is trying to reclaim these worlds that have been lost. He is woken up and he's trying to piece together bits of the Imperium, and he's trying to push back. He created his Primaris Marines, he's sending them out, but he's looking at this galactic map and he's watching some of these battlefronts and these worlds turn red, which implies like they're losing. They're losing against the Tyranids. They're overwhelming them. And you get a lot of really good action shots of like the Infernus Marines, your combi lieutenant, stuff like that, which is a really cool model. Unfortunately, I think its rules have given it a really bad reputation because people absolutely hate that model. But it's a very cool model in terms of its appearance. And I think there's a story in the cinematic that does itself a good service. Now, was it jump up and scream? No, not quite. I think there's a few shots that are good shots, but not. It doesn't give you the full emotion, the full weight, the full feeling that it could. I will say though, it does show up in a solid showcase, specifically because of that plot with Roboute, especially because he is also kind of talking to the Emperor. He's trying to address him, and he's like doing the best he can. I think it really helps build up the edition. And the launch box was pretty solid. The new Terminators looked great. You had the little drop beacons and stuff like that were cool. I thought they did a pretty decent job with that. So I think that one gets a solid showcase in my book. Next up is Age of Sigmar 4th edition. This one was interesting because I remember watching this. This didn't happen too long ago, about a year ago. Unveiling the rats in their full skin, they've unleashed the Vermin Doom, this big plot that they've been working on for a very long time. They burst up through the earth, and they've essentially co-opted this entire area of Akshi to take over, and they are immediately invading Hammerhall Akshi. And it gave us a new look at the Reclusians, a good look at that chamber, that Ruination Chamber, which are Stormcast journalists who have been around for a very, very, very long time, and basically have been reborn so many times that they've just like lost their humanity. They're kind of almost automaton-like, but they're particularly brutal, and they resist corruption well because there's probably virtually nothing to corrupt. It was a cool cinematic. It had some really good shots in it. More specifically, I did kind of like the build-up to the Ruination main character. All the times that, the first time they died, that turned them into a Stormcast. The second time they died, third time, etc. Like, it really built that up very nicely. The cinematic did look really good. It did hype me up a good fair bit, and it got to the point where I bought a box. So it did its job. And in terms of the story, I think it actually did do a pretty good job. I would have to say though, I mean, it's a pretty solid showing. I was pleasantly surprised. Age of Sigmar doesn't have the amount of cinematics that 40K does. I hope that kind of changes a little bit, but for the most part, I would say that the launch of that one was actually pretty good. I would say that this is a very accurate ranking though. I would say that the second edition one had me very hyped. This one had me pretty hyped, and this one did have me hyped, but I think there was still a little bit more to it. So the main story being around the Reclusion model, the one that where she's died the first time she turned into a Stormcast, and then dying every time after as a Stormcast, and eventually becoming reclusion, but still not quite hitting there. All right, so next up we have the Horus Heresy 3rd Edition trailer. This one started off very interesting, specifically because it opens up with specifically Constantine Valdor, and he's having a conversation with a Sister of Silence, and he's talking about the grand painting that the Emperor has in this room, and he talks about how it's an oddity amongst all the schematics and the scientific things to have this great mural of this artwork, and talking about how it elaborated on the Emperor's grand design for the galaxy. So it starts with that. It starts very calmly, just having this conversation, and then the Sister of Silence signs to him, but the 16th, which is the Sons of Horus, will shatter this gilded lie, and he's like, well, I don't know. And he even says, it depends on how deep the rot goes. Which then turns and transitions to Istvan, where it is an Iron Warrior Centurion kind of meditating on the battlefield. There's bodies all around him. And then wakes up to hearing tanks rolling over. There's tarantula batteries. There's a lot of great action shots in there. Really has a lot of momentum. Unveils the Iron Warriors in Mark II armor and the Salamanders in Mark II armor, which looks incredible. The Mark II is probably one of my favorite variants of the armor that they've done. I absolutely love it. So it has a lot of momentum. It has some really good shots in there. It unveils the Saturnine Terminator, or as some people like to call them, the Marmite Marines. I think they look pretty good. I mean, the action's pretty solid, and it does a good job hyping up the 3rd edition for that. I did end up picking up a 3rd edition box, but it's not quite the cinema that the 2nd edition trailer is. It does have Malcador as well in there talking to Constantine Valdor, but it just didn't quite capture the same essence of the cinematic trailer of 2nd edition. I think the 2nd edition one just had this grander scope feeling to it. You do get that inside of Istvan, and it's still kind of like this smaller engagement. I think it would have been more interesting for them to continue to have the Valdor parts, and talking to Malcador. But I think what they should have had was done a wider shot of Loyalist Marines running in to fight, and then maybe even showing the betrayal, showing the Night Lords and stuff like that turning against them mid-combat, like maybe having them turn around just like, brothers help, or whatever, and then have them betray them. I think that would have given a greater emotional weight to the cinematic, and it would have really driven home the impact of the great betrayal of all of them, because it does end with Malcador saying half the legions have defected to Horus's side. At that point, just show it. If you show it in the cinematic, you do that wider, grander shot, because that's what also helps sell it on the 2nd edition, is you have these massive battle sequences that you see, like Horus literally looks out onto a battlefield where there's titans marching against each other, just massive forces rushing and firing bolters, and they're dropping and dying. I think that would have sold that edition a lot better, is if they would have still done that grander scale, that grander shot, and even maybe showed that betrayal, that immediate betrayal. I think it would have sold it a lot more. So for me, it's going to go into solid showcase. It is still very exciting. You get the Mark II, you get the Saturnine, and you do get to see Valdor and Malcador completely voiced, which is great. But I really think they probably should have done a grander shot on some of the sequences in there. Could have really done more. So yeah, for me, it's still good, but it's not that great. And actually, coming to think of it, if I'm looking at this one, I'd probably move this down to eh. Like I was excited with it, but also I don't think it really dropped any of my jaw, dropped my jaw really. So that one's actually getting adjusted. The 40K one, 10th edition, it was still pretty solid, so I'd leave that there. But Horus Heresy 3rd edition, solid showcase, but definitely not the absolute cinema that one is. Next up, we have the Iron Will cinematic, which is not the launch of a new edition, but it was a cinematic that was done for talking about Armageddon. More specifically, it's a bunch of guardsmen fighting on Armageddon, and there's this general and/or governor who is giving orders and saying, I appreciate the sacrifice of every single one of you. He's really building up this speech, and you see these phenomenal shots of the guardsmen fighting across the world. You have them set in jungles, like the jungles of Armageddon. You have them set in the trenches. You have Cadians. You have Krieg lining up, getting ready to run out. And there's so many immaculate shots in this cinematic. Like, there's so much well done. And of course, the big announcement for this is not only just driving home the Armageddon part, but also driving home the return of Sebastian Yark, Commissar Yark. When the governor tries to say, flee, run, get to the evacuation ships, save yourselves, blah, 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 you hear it, you actually hear it, you hear that click, click, and then a boom. And he drops. Yark just shoves him aside, and then he's like, there will be no retreat. He gives this grand speech, and all of a sudden the guardmen are rallying up again. It shows them overcoming a lot of the orcs, ganging up on them, jumping on them, and stuff like that. It really drives home the feeling of Astra Militarum specifically, because you're seeing this constant struggle where it feels like they're losing or they're barely holding ground, and they're paying a heavy toll. And for something like Krieg shows it. They're determined. That's what makes them scary. But even then, you feel a sense of aggression to that, which is great. And there goes my screen again. There it goes. It's back. Iron Will, pure cinema. It's incredibly well done. The story, the overlaying art of it is phenomenal. And the thing that does best that some of these other ones down here do not do is it sticks with the action. When it comes to some of the shots, there's a lot of these where they'll just cut really quickly to try and make it like aggressive and make it seem kind of more chaotic. I think this one does a better job because it sticks with a lot of shots. There's a great pan shot into the trenches where it follows some Krieg like running down a trench line, going along with them. And then it immediately flows into another shot of them like leveling down like an orc boy with a shooter, like literally just shooting him down and like ganging up on him. Because you have that momentum, because you stuck with that shot and you had that longer take with it, it built the momentum, it told the story, you rally behind them. You also have the incredible shot of like the alarm going off as Krieger going up and over the trench and assaulting. It really absolutely evokes emotion, and its absolute action is fantastic. It's well done. The color palette is incredible. And of course, the big finale is just absolute masterpiece. Iron Will gets an S for sure. All right, last one for this one, and I hope I eventually get to do more of these. And of course, if you like this content, feel free to like, share, subscribe. I massively appreciate it. It's just kind of a fun little thing that I thought about when I was watching all these. So, 11th edition Warhammer 40k. What do I think about it? Well, we're back to Armageddon again. Not gonna lie though, it gets an specifically because it didn't really hype me up for the edition. It's Blood Angels versus Orcs. The Orcs were pretty solid. We got to see some new models. We got to see a new Warrior Boy. We got to see a new like Walker Psyker thing gun platform. It'll be interesting to see what that actually is and what that does. And we got Vanguard vets in there. It was really hard to tell because they just look like jump pack intercessors. They really didn't do much to add to them. So shrug. But as a whole, it just did not evoke the emotion. You had the cool like last stand moment. They're standing on a hill. There's a Blade Guard veteran fighting and clearing people off. The action sequences are pretty solid. But it definitely cuts a lot too. The coolest shot is probably actually inside the helmet of the Blood Angels character there, because it actually like pans in and you get to see like kind of the Iron Man display on him in the red light, and you get a lot of really good facial emotions in there. But for the most part, this didn't tell a story to me. It's Armageddon. We're back here. It's kind of nostalgia baiting in terms of like, from what I understand, it's like an old box that they did before. My monitor is going to probably die out on me, so we'll probably cut this here in a little bit. But basically, it gets an at. It really didn't do what it should have, which was really, really hype up the next edition. I think there's a lot more they could have done with it. Again, they need to focus on what tells a story. I mean, when you're looking at these two S tier ones, they tell a story, they have momentum, their action sequences actually have a little bit more drawn out to them, there's more detail to them, it shows the scope and scale. I mean, if your entire tagline is, in the grimdark future of the 41st millennium, there is only war, if that's one of your taglines, is there's only war, or the Age of Sigmar and stuff, you need to show the scale of it. If you take out the scale, it doesn't feel nearly as much. I think sometimes they think, oh, well, we're going to focus on this one character, there's going to be a personal thing there. Great, but have the depth to tell that story in 2 to 3 minutes without doing it. I think The third edition one got kind of close, but it's still just kind of okay. There were some cool sequences in there, but not a ton. I still think this one actually did a better job just because of specifically some of the scale and showing like the cruel boy with the severed head, like that color palette, the city burning in the background, the gut rippers killing people. It really set a scale and a precedent to it with that third edition AOS one. But your top two are for sure Horus Heresy second edition cinematic trailer and the Iron Will trailer that we got not that long ago with Commissar Yarrick. Let me know what you think down in the comments down below. Of course, if there's a cinematic that I didn't have here that you want me to review, want me to look at, just post it down in the comments down below. And again, feel free to like, share, subscribe. And of course, if there's anything that you're looking forward to in the future, is maybe you're looking forward to 11th, you have any questions or anything like that, of course, let me know down in the comments down below. And of course, until next time, I've been Tattoo Tabletop. Go paint something.